So just to kind of wrap up, and we'll have a little time after this. So the days of wireless just being good enough are behind us for obviously the reasons we've discussed. I had a customer last year, a very large customer, that we were redoing the wireless and wired network in all of their locations around the world. We literally sat down with their director and VP prior to meeting with the engineering group, and the comment was, we are going mobile first with Skype, and if the end users don't have a good experience and that user experience is not there, this is a failed project. So we said, okay, we understand. Left that meeting, literally sat down with them and the engineering group. They said the same thing to the engineering group. They got up and left. And the engineering group literally came back and said, well, okay, so at all of these locations, if they're not complaining about wireless, we're not going to change anything. And we kind of sat there dumbfounded for a second, and then came back and we were like, you know, you're totally changing your network here. You're going from, say, 20 wireless devices to possibly 100 wireless devices. And they're all doing very intense applications with Skype, video chatting, all of that. And so we went around and around with them, and finally they realized, you know what, you're right. We got them to sign off. We sent teams out to the sites to do a passive survey. Then we did predictive surveys on top of that. And we were able to find some very large gaps, and we fixed those gaps before the deployments, adjusted the designs. We did their corporate IT office that had probably 700 plus users in it across probably 6 or 7 story building. And they came back and said, there has been a marked improvement in the network and the wireless and all of that. And this is totally successful. So that's why I harp on this so much, is because we were able to do that. And we had the proof to show, okay, here it is before and after. Application requirements and dependency on the wireless just continue to grow. Like we were talking, streaming services, voice and video on the desktop, wirelessly walking around, the HVAC and environmental controls. That has become a very important piece to a lot of our customers, just based on, because either the building is leased by somebody else or their group isn't local there, but the environmental piece, and it ties back to IoT, that's become extremely important to our customers. Location has become important. Where are you? How can I get around a facility? Not necessarily blue dot, but somewhat hyperlocation, especially with healthcare and some of the other verticals that we're in. Doing this, just in my mind, and I think other people on this call's mind, I would say you're doing it right from the beginning. You're not just kind of going with it, going on site and saying, okay, well, we think we can do it here and here. We actually have the data to show, granted, it's predictive, but it's pretty darn close to show, okay, this is what we're pretty sure it's going to look like. And for the most part, it looks like that. If not, it's a little bit off, but we're doing it right from the beginning. And we're not having to go back to that customer 2 and 3 times to keep adjusting things and fixing things, which just costs all of us time, profits on the project, GP goes down, all of that. It's just do it right from the start, and you're better off at the end. If you do it right from the beginning, and you do this predictive model, and you look at, what are my walls going to look like? I know from AutoCAD that this is how the building was built, so I know what a lot of the walls are. A lot of the drawings we get have that on there. But I know what I'm walking into. I know what I'm handing off to delivery at that point, that there's no questions when they get on site of, well, our guys are trying to install this, but it's in a bathroom. Okay, well, we can move it, and then we have to look at the predictive and readjust it. But things like that done ahead of time save us hours and hours on site of a guy sitting there not being able to deploy because of issues with placements or things of that nature. And reports save lives. You know, we create a predictive report that we hand to the customer for generally in every project to say, here's what we believe it's going to look like. Here's the predictive and here's the design. Then we do our post-installation validation survey, and it pretty much does, is showing, okay, here's the design that we thought it was going to be, here's what it actually is. And then from there, again, we can do our gap analysis, or we can do a remediation plan to say, okay, we're at A, how do we get to B? And how do we do that? So, and 2 years down the road, a customer comes back to us. Hey, the wireless isn't working in this area anymore. We think, and the first question is always, well, what's changed? And the customer's first response is always, well, nothing changed. Of course not. Well, we have those reports then to say, well, here's what it was when we left, and here were the settings and everything else. So let's look at it. And typically it's either somebody upgraded something or made a change they didn't realize, or like we talked back here, I've got changes to my facility. I've got new walls. I've got, workers, groups of workers moving. I'm moving the call center guys, or I'm moving sales guys or inside sales guys or whatever from, the third floor to the fourth floor. Well, okay, we had it designed for the third floor for that capacity, and the fourth floor wasn't necessarily. So now that's where we can take those reports. We can do a predictive to say, okay, if I move this number of devices and this number of people to this area, what's that going to do? And how is my capacity going to look? What's my network health going to look like? And can I, what do I need to do to fix it? And then that's, again, we can take that report, make our remediation, make our recommendations, and kind of go from there. And that's pretty much all I had from that side. So questions, discussion points, kind of open the floor at this point.